Screw-up nation. Why the tech we count on keeps letting us down. The Centrelink debacle that slugged thousands of Aussies with unfair debt is the latest in a string of disasters in which technology has let us down, with devastating consequences. Anthony Albanese says the government has been dismissive of vulnerable people in the false debt debacle. We have become a nation where screw-ups are the new normal. Almost exactly a year ago, Centrelink was in the middle of another storm when it was forced to apologize for a New Year's computer glitch that incorrectly told 73,000 families they were in debt. When family tax benefits claimants checked their accounts online, they were wrongly shown to owe money, with one mother mistakenly charged more than $700. The Australian Bureau of Statistics then paid IBM $9.6 million to run the bungled 2016 census because its own systems were antiquated and unreliable. The national survey was a massive failure, with the website going down for 40 hours and a Senate committee inquiry finding significant and obvious oversights in its delivery. And in early December, around the time Centrelink ramped up distribution of bogus debt letters to Aussies looking forward to the festive season, the ATO's online system crashed after a failure in a hardware storage solution provided by Hewlett-Packard. Fears of suicide. We live in a world where the support networks we rely on are increasingly automated, so when they go wrong, the danger is palpable. If our systems fail, vulnerable people can be cut off from vital resources, personal information leaked to thieves and innocent citizens accused of crimes they never committed. At worst, these screw-ups can leave disabled, elderly and mentally ill people trapped in a nightmare with no escape, as we have seen with the Centrelink crisis, which has seen some talk of suicide, and the agency repeatedly tweet the lifeline number. But despite hundreds of complaints about the inaccurate debt letters generated because of computer glitches, the government has insisted the system is working. After announcing it would claw back $400 million in unemployment benefit overpayments, it admitted 20% didn't exist, an error rate Social Services Minister Christian Porter this week said was perfectly acceptable. Other claims are being revised down as people submit missing information. So will the exercise be worth the money and time, resources and emotional distress? Broken from the start. The problems for Centrelink go a long way back, with reports 60% of calls were going unanswered back in May. The glitches should have emerged when automation was introduced in July, but the agency pushed ahead with sending out its inaccurate December letters. This looks like it was broken from the start, expert Justin Warren told news.com.au. It looks the system was developed in-house, and it's gone into a more automated mode, where human oversight is removed. The burden of fixing that is now on people receiving notices. That's weird. Mr. Warren, who has worked for Telstra Australia Post, IBM and ANZ, said that if any other company was made aware of a 20% error rate, a program would be delayed. He points to basic errors, dates not lining up, salaries spread over a year despite months of unemployment, incorrect addresses in the system and the computer thinking one employer with varying names was two. Yet that data is available. Up-to-date addresses and unvarying employer ABNs are held by the ATO. I don't know how it made it out of testing, he said. If there were this many problems with it, you'd pull the plug. There's no crisis management going on. The problem with big data. Over the past few days, senior ministers, lawyers, political parties and human rights organizations have spoken out about the Centrelink crisis and demanded the system be suspended. But how did it get to this point? There's this gung-ho attitude about the benefits and opportunities in adopting big data tools wholesale, Australian Privacy Foundation Vice Chair David Vaile told news.com.au. Big data is designed to work with incomplete information, he said, which works just fine for the advertising industry, for example, where a slight inaccuracy is not life and death. The marketing and overhyping of big data is the answer to everything hasn't taken into account that for other decisions it's fatally flawed, he said. It needs sophistication at a policy level and at implementation level to work out which areas it's not suitable for. More data is not necessarily better if the analysis isn't there, he added. It's unreliable, it needs a lot of human checking, he said. You need to assume it's wrong. Have they charged and without the skills and skeptical development? Maybe 90% are okay. That means, however, if you've got 1 million people, with 100,000 people you're making errors and unfounded decisions and putting them needlessly into distress. Dirty, dodgy, misleading. Things go wrong with any large system involving humans, says Mr. Warren. But the government needs to prepare for problems and acknowledge mistakes. There's a lack of willingness to take responsibility, even a denial if there's a problem at all. It doesn't sound like an efficient use of resources, staff time answering phones over $50. Why not do more about large-scale fraud instead of harassing grandma just before Christmas? And these are tax-paying citizens, they're cross-matching data with the ADO. They're calling back money, but why is it being overspent in the first place? It's daft and ineffective. There's so much about this that makes no sense. While blame was heaped on IBM for the census fail, outsourcing is not always a bad thing, according to Mr. Warren. If something's not strategic to your business, like cleaning or plumbing, outsource it. If something is desperately important to your business, it's better to do it in-house, or at least have some oversight. With the ABS, that oversight wasn't there. With Centrelink, have they outsourced, and how much is in-house? If it's in-house, clearly there's a lack of capability. Mr. Vail says it's simply a question of being transparent, so the system can easily be checked and corrected. If it's dirty, dodgy, misleading information that works for other purposes, are they prepared to provide maximum transparency so we can check the quality and accuracy of the data? They've got the tools in place. Accuracy, completeness and up-to-dateness of information, that's right. Last bastion of the 90s. The government's chief former digital officer Paul Schiedler, who resigned in November after being hired to transform its approach to technology, told news.com.au the public service needs to be radically reskilled with people who are trained in design, product, delivery, leadership, and data. The root cause of these failures is a de-skilled public service that doesn't understand and sometimes fears 21st century technology, he said. The government has no coordinated approach to technology yet. Our government looks like it is the last bastion of the 90s outsourced model. We need to fix the basics first before we do the fancy dancing holograms. We need less reliance on vested interests. Government needs to own its own strategy like every other 21st century company does. We need the APS, Australian Public Service, to go back to providing frank and fearless advice to ministers and their ministerial advisors, and much less butt covering to avoid blame. He said if we continue down our current path, the country will have a government that offers inferior services and increasingly fails while spending $16 billion and counting on these services. The public will lose faith in its politicians and its government's ability to deliver service, with the crisis of confidence that follows that. The public needs to understand what's at stake. It will only get better if the people demand it.